one of those, and particularly questions that kind of honestly plague me about this particular story. And so what I want to do today is maybe involve you a little more than I did yesterday and ask some questions. I have a series of questions that'll take us through this text, and I invite your oral answers. Anything you have to offer about that would be very helpful. And I would preface it by saying all the questions should have this as its prefix. What do you think? Da, 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 da. Because you can't ever be wrong with that. You're never wrong if I ask the question, what do you think? You say, well, I thought this. I can't say, nope, that's not right, because that's what you thought. So feel free to speak up, share your thoughts. Let's see if we can pool our resources and our thinking on this and come up with something that might be helpful to us all. So I want to begin with the reading of the text. Mark chapter 1, beginning in verse 40. And a leper came to Jesus, beseeching him and falling on his knees before him and saying, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Moved with compassion, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And he sternly warned him and immediately sent him away. And he said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them. But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the news around to such an extent that Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city, but stayed out in unpopulated areas, and they were coming to him from everywhere. All right? Now, I want to go back and put this in a little bit of a context for you of Mark chapter 1. Mark's my favorite gospel. Of the four, I just love Mark's gospel. I love it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I love it because he just gets into the heart of the matter very quickly. Mark's a guy who says, I think it is important you ought to know it, and once you know that, let's move on to something else. So he moves pretty rapidly from point to point. But secondly, Mark is really concerned about showing the majesty and power of Jesus. And it's generally thought that he's that way because he's writing for a Roman world. And I think you and I, if we were to describe Romans, if we were to just say, here's what I think Romans were like, we probably would use words like gentle, thoughtful, meditative, well-read. Now, all those things may be true of some Romans, but we don't typically think of them that way. You probably, when you think Romans, you think Russell Crowe and Gladiator. You know, the Romans admired power. They, in that movie, isn't it the word strength and honor? Isn't that what they say? Anybody know? Gladiator? Y'all don't know Gladiator? Okay. I think that's what they say to each other. You know, they clasp forearms as they get ready to go into battle. And the thing that concerns them is strength and honor. Well, we can die, but let's die with honor. We're not going out of here screaming and running, much like the Spartans, you know, mothers of Spartans would tell their sons the first time they went into battle. The Spartans had these large shields that they had, and occasionally when the Spartans gathered up their dead, because they won a lot more than they lost. They weren't undefeated, but pretty close, winning seasons every year. The Spartans would use their shields to carry their dead on. So a Spartan mother would say to her son, because the shields were so large, if you fled, you had to drop the shield. You wouldn't want to run with a big heavy shield and run away. They would say, come home with your shield or on it. And that was the way they were raised. That kind of concept, fight to the death, honor before anything else, characterized the Romans. So when Mark writes this gospel and he's trying to appeal to Romans, he doesn't do like Luke does. Luke writes all these great compilations of pithy statements Jesus made and parables that he told, and he groups them all together. Mark's not into that. The Romans aren't into that. So when you go back in chapter 1, I want to show you something. There's one word Mark uses repeatedly. And in chapter 1 of Mark, he uses it 10 times. I'm not sure I'll catch all 10, but I want to show you this. All right, we come down to verse 9. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. Immediately, coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens open, and a voice said, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Verse 12, immediately the Spirit impelled him to go out into the wilderness. And then you come along to verse 17, Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I'll make you become fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed them. Verse 20, immediately he called them, and they left their father. They went into Capernaum, verse 21, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue. They were amazed at his teaching, and you come on down to verse 28. Immediately, the news about him spread everywhere. Verse 29, immediately after they came out of the synagogue, they came into the house of Simon. Simon's mother-in-law, verse 30, was lying sick with a fever, and immediately they spoke to Jesus about her. You come on down further, and you come to our story here, and we saw the word in verse 42. Immediately the leprosy left him. Verse 43, he warned him and immediately sent him away. There 10 times. What Mark needed was a thesaurus. You know, I mean, thesauruses are not only awesome, they're awesome. You know, they're just great resources. And here, but why is that word so prevalent in the Gospel of Mark? Because it says, like, man, I know I'm using a lot of references to culture, but it's like, let it be done, so it shall be done. It was spoken, make it so. Let it happen. And so everything is done, and immediately. There's no waffling, there's no thinking about it. It says God knew what he was doing, Jesus knew what he was doing, and it happened, just like they said it would. And the Romans would have liked that. They would have enjoyed that kind of power and control of the situations. Now, it's in that context, Jesus has been baptized, he's gone into the wilderness, he's fought against Satan there. And interestingly enough, Mark even doesn't even go into much detail about that. He doesn't do like Matthew does and Luke does to give us the details of that confrontation with Satan. He just says 40 days being tempted by Satan, and he's done with that. But he immediately gets into the miracles. He wants to show you, here's what Jesus was doing. He calls the disciples, gathers them, and then the first miracle that Mark talks about is power over the demons in verse 21. And then the healing of Peter's mother-in-law and many others in verse 34. All right, and then he comes to this particular miracle. And I want you to go through this with me as if we've never seen this before, because it's so easy for us. We've heard the stories over and over again. It's so easy for us to just, yeah, I know, that's what happened. But you need to see it as it happened and understand how marvelous this particular miracle is. So we've got this man with leprosy. Leprosy. Now, let me begin by asking, have any of you ever had leprosy? It is still in the world today. It's not cured. So it would be possible that somebody could raise their hand. That would have been wonderful to have somebody who said, I did have it, because it is curable. Leprosy is not incurable. It used to be kind of a death knell. If you got leprosy, it was, well, good luck for most people. But that's not the case today. So what do you know about leprosy? Just tell me what you think about leprosy when you hear it. From the effects of it to its contagion. What do you know about it? Anybody? Okay, rotting flesh. Good. All right. Rotting flesh. That's a really good term and one we revulsed by. Anything else? Isolation. You isolate the people. Why? Deathly afraid of it. Quarantine those people. Again, because not curable. It wasn't a curable disease. It wasn't like other things you could say, no problem, put this salve on it and we're okay. That's the way people viewed it then. Anything else? Disfigurement. Yeah, disfigurement. You want to go into detail? Do you know what you mean by that?
Doesn't it just, the aforementioned flesh that's rotting, sometimes results in fingers and extremities being, falling off?
Key word, extremities. Leprosy almost always started with the extremities. So it could start with the fingers or the toes. It wouldn't usually start at the knee. Even if you had it there, it would quickly go to the extremities because it is nerve related. And we know a lot about leprosy now. It's called Hansen's disease now. We don't typically call it leprosy. Leprosy was a term that was pretty broad. It could cover any number of skin disorders. But the one that was most feared is the one that we call Hansen's disease. And it attacks the nerves so that it deadens the nerves on the extremities, much like what we call today neuropathy. But here's what would happen. When the nerves at the ends of the body were affected by that, if you got any kind of infection or any kind of wound or open sore there, your nerves wouldn't respond to it there so that you didn't even necessarily know or feel what was happening. And then the infection would take root and cause the extremities to drop off. So it was very common to see people with leprosy with just nubs of fingers, just nubs, because they would fall off. And it would be literally that. You wake up one morning and your finger's laying next to you. But the worst, the disfigurements that were worse, were the loss of the nose, the eyelids, and the lips. Ears could fall off, but it was the loss of the eyelids that would naturally lead to what? Blindness. You cannot see if you don't have eyelids because you can't keep watering your eyes and you can't clear it of debris. So the eyes get infected, you become blind. The nose dropping off was what caused them, if you ever see movies, Barabbas, Barabbas, or The Greatest Story Ever Told, or Ben-Hur, you'll always see the lepers, they've got a wrap around their face to cover the nose and lips, because often those were parts of the body that dropped off. I mean, literally dropped off. You just got a hole in the front of your face that you're breathing through. So while leprosy didn't itself just take your life, it took living. It took living from you. I mean, you can't eat well if you can't close your lips. You can't see. You can smell, but that's got to be a very painful thing to not have nostrils. I don't think we even realize how valuable our nostrils are in filtering air that comes in and making it moist by coming through the nostrils. And how the hairs that are in your nostrils filter out those things that are unhealthy for us to breathe in. There's so much about leprosy that made it, your feet wouldn't have toes. If you don't have toes, it's very difficult to walk. You can, but it's very difficult. You have to walk with crutches. But if you got leprosy bad, you can't hold on to crutches because you don't have fingers. You see how terrible this disease was? Are you getting a sense of how horrible it was? So you're not wanting to see anybody because you don't want them to see you. And lepers were kept out in the outer parts of the cities, oftentimes living in caves. Ben-Hur gives a really good picture of what a leper colony looked like. So it is a debilitating disease, but it is also one which just humiliates the person who has it. There is no dignity in leprosy, none whatsoever. And it's so contagious, touch can cause one to get it. It actually, I said so contagious. It was contagious. We've learned Hansen's disease is not like if one person touches you and they got leprosy, you got it. It wasn't that way. But the fear of it was there. You can imagine what that was. If we know what we've done during COVID, and there are people who've died from COVID. I'm not making light of that at all. But we've taken incredible measures to try to keep ourselves from getting that. And yet, for the vast majority of people, getting COVID is not deadly. But imagine a disease that if you caught this, it's going to take away all your dignity. It's going to deprive you of your family. You'll not see your family. Family can bring food to the outer edges of a leper colony, and they leave it there. But if a leper ever came into town, he had to announce his or her leprosy to others. And the very words that were used say something about leprosy. Unclean. You didn't say leprosy. You didn't say get out of the way. You said repeatedly unclean. So every day you were around other people, you had to remind them and yourself you're impure. So the Bible uses leprosy as a picture, oftentimes, of sin. Why? Why? Why do you think leprosy is an appropriate picture for sin? Thoughts? Huh? Slow destruction. Good. What else? It takes away everything. I know you've heard it. I love it. I've written it in Bibles. Sin will take you farther than you want to go, take from you more than you want to give, and keep you longer than you want to stay. That's a great statement. You obviously have heard it because you didn't scramble to write it down.
Well, wouldn't it be great if we, like a leper being repulsive, we saw sin as repulsive?
Yeah.
But sin is so attractive.
Yes, it is. That's a really good point, John. Yes, sin often makes itself attractive. Nothing attractive about leprosy. I mean, nobody would have said, well, I ate that fruit because it tasted so good, but I didn't realize it'll give me leprosy. It wasn't that kind of thing. You avoided it at all costs. But yes, sin looks good. And then by the time you got it, there's nothing you can do about it, that kind of thing. So leprosy's like sin. It is progressive. It takes more from us than we ever want to give. It affects every aspect of our lives, even when we don't realize it. I mean, we could stay here on this subject for another hour just talking about how sin affects our relationship with others like leprosy does. It will ultimately cause us. Now, a leper doesn't worry about being around another leper. That wasn't an issue. But if you were a leper, you didn't want to be around pure people because you could affect their purity. You get caught up in sin. I was talking with somebody the other day who's been way out in the fields of sin. They've left the faith and they've gone out and they're looking to come back. And I was talking with this person, and one of the things that they said was, my lifestyle has taken from me every important person in my life. and now trying to come back and trying to rebuild the relationship that he had so long ago. It's just difficult to do. When you have leprosy, you can't be around, and you don't want to be around people that are healthy, because either you'll taint them or you just don't have anything in common with them anymore. So that's kind of an important point, that leprosy is like sin, because of the conversation that takes place here. You've been very helpful. Thanks. Let's go to the next question. Why the question about Jesus being willing? Have you ever thought about that? That the leper comes up to Jesus. First of all, I want you to notice this. A leper came to Jesus. Listen to the wording. Beseeching him. What comes to your mind when you hear the word beseech? We don't use it very much. Begging. Yeah, good. Begging. I mean, just, he's not saying, he hasn't come up to Jesus and he says, oh, by the way, I got leprosy. Can you help me here? It's not that. It isn't even holding up a sign. I have leprosy. Can you cure me? This beseeching is begging. When you think of begging, how do you often think of people? Posture. Always on their knees. Yeah, begging, always. Because it's a person, when you beg for something, you're begging for something you don't have, somebody else has. So you're necessarily in the inferior position. And it's very common to go to your knees. Go to your knees and beg. Even clutch him around the knees. But he won't do that. Why? Not going to touch Jesus because he's unclean. He's not going to touch Jesus. But he's beseeching him. Can you see him? He's almost there. I mean, he's like wanting, please, but he can't touch him. He can't. Beseeching him, falling on his knees before him, and saying. He's beseeching him and saying. So what does that tell you? He's saying it over and over again. This isn't a one-time request. Oh, Lord, I need your help. Jesus, please, stop, help me. Falling on his knees before him. And then here's what he asked. If you're willing, you can make me clean. Why do you think that question was asked of Jesus? If you're willing, you can make me clean. Why do you think he asked that question? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, what risk do you think he's taking? Okay, good. Maybe Jesus will get the leprosy if he stays too close to him, so that's a risk. So Jesus, it might be, if you're willing, if you'll stay here, the touch I want to get to. That's not required that Jesus touch him. That comes as a surprise, I think. But even just a proximity to this man, falling on his knees in front of him, could have caused maybe Jesus to get it. So, hey, don't run away. If you're willing, hey, stay here. Good. What else? Yep. Doesn't feel worthy. Okay? I don't deserve this. Of course, it's like I remember a guy one time getting an award in a meeting I was at, and he got this trophy for some accomplishments he had. He said, you know, I have to say, I don't deserve this. But I also have arthritis, and I don't deserve that either. You know, so he could say, I don't deserve your help, but I don't deserve leprosy either. Hardly anybody that got leprosy would say, I know exactly how I got it. I know where I got it. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have kissed that woman. Whatever it was, I shouldn't have touched those kids. There are all kinds of things, but he certainly doesn't feel probably that he deserves leprosy, although there may be a possibility that he does. But yeah, I don't deserve to ask you this. You don't have to give it to me, but would you? Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't ask somebody if they're willing to do something if you didn't know they had the ability.
Oh, good. All right, I'm glad you caught that. He doesn't say if you're able. He's not talking about Jesus' ability to do it. He's talking about Jesus' aptitude to do it? Aptitude. Is Jesus willing to do this? He says, if you're able, then what? Then what in the text? If you're able or willing, you might make me clean. He is absolutely convinced that Jesus can do this. And it's largely based on the things that we've read already in Mark. Mark sets us up with all these other miracles. So this man has some sense Jesus can do this. So it's all about not his ability, but about his aptitude. So keep going. Oh, good. Are there any instances where Jesus wasn't willing to do this? Are there? I'm going to reserve that question because I'm going to come back to it. I want to come back to it in a little bit. But that's a really interesting observation. Why might Jesus not be willing to heal this particular man? I've given you a clue when I told you what leprosy is compared to. There was a very common feeling that if you were afflicted with some great disease or illness or handicap, that you may have gotten it because you deserved it. Can you think of any case, any instance at all like that? Good. What did the disciples ask Jesus? Do you remember?
Who sinned, this man or his man?
John chapter 9. Who sinned? Hey, Lord, here's a blind man on the side of the road begging for relief and help. And the disciples look at him and they say, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, I'm going to tell you something. There is within all of us this sense of ought, a sense of fairness, that things happen to us that we always get what we deserve. Always. Now, most of the time, we want to call in the favors when it's something we think is good. It is rare for us to drive down the road and a police officer pull us over to the side and say, you were speeding, and go, I'm so glad you caught me. I knew I was speeding and I deserved this. Please, give me the full extent of punishment for this. We don't do that. We don't do that. But there is this sense that we have that if something bad happened to somebody, they probably got what they deserved. And the Bible is replete with examples that prove that's not true. You know, that's what Job's friends did. They came and said, okay, come on, Job, you got to fess up. Something's wrong here. I mean, for all these things to happen to you, something is wrong. Go back, search your memory. What'd you do? Did you kill somebody, bury the body? What has happened in your life that caused this? And I got to tell you something. Time and chance overtake us all. So you can be doing a really good job at your job, a really good job, and you lose a job, and it wasn't because of anything you did, it's just circumstances, or maybe you just had an unfair boss, or the company went under, and you lost it. You're going to really struggle if you have this view that we always get just what we deserve. That every time I pass go in Monopoly, I get $200 every time. Because sometimes I forget to collect, and the other players aren't kind to remind me to collect my $200. So this man may be asking this question because the common thinking was if you had leprosy, maybe you deserved it. Maybe this is what you get. And so if you're willing, you can make me clean. That's a common view from that time. But Jesus doesn't know him. Jesus doesn't know him anything. So it may be that, which has been spoken. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you to make me clean, but I'll tell you what, if you'd be happy to do that, I'd sure be happy to receive it. So, next question. Why the stern warning? Oh, by the way, Jesus says, I am willing. And let's stop there for a moment. Look at this. Moved with compassion, verse 41. Jesus is not primarily doing this because he wants a display of his power. He is moved with compassion for this man. I think we all would be touched by this man's approach. There are plenty of other lepers. They're not doing this. This man comes, he falls down, he begs, shows respect, shows faith, moved with compassion. Here's the part that does perhaps surprise us and certainly the crowd of people that were around. Not that he's moved with compassion, but that he stretched out his hand and touched him. Human touch. There have been so many studies that have been done about the importance of human touch with babies, how they are nurtured and cared for, that babies demand human contact, touch. There is so much evidence about how babies, how babies that are held in the arms of a mother are comforted by that, and what that means by way of security, and that there are endorphins that rush when we touch, and those aren't all unhealthy things. That's healthy. There are times you can hold it together, and then all of a sudden somebody touches you to hug you, to give you some comfort, and you just lose it. Why? Touch. It's the touch. It's that element. Now add to that this fact. This man's got leprosy. So what does that mean? Nobody's touched him. I mean, I'm not being funny when I say this. I'm not trying to be at all. I mean, it may be that the lepers all came back to the colony in the afternoon and said, come here, let me give you a hug. They may have. But my guess is their disfigurement was such, they didn't want to touch each other either. Not that they were afraid of getting anything worse, but I'm talking about just the self-worth would lead you to believe, I don't have anything to offer you, not even a hug. It just doesn't mean anything. So for this perfectly well man to stretch out his hand, it's not just picking him up here right in front. Stretching out indicates it's an intentional thing. He could have just said from the distance I am from Mary, be healed. And you and I know it would have happened. And if Mary were in the back of this building and Jesus said, be healed, it could happen. And if she were across town, it could happen. But the fact that he reaches out and touches this man is almost a commentary on the statement about being moved with compassion. God's people need to touch. Now, I give you that, but I also understand that has its dangers. I think that's why Paul instructed the Roman brethren to greet one another with a holy kiss. I think he's saying, don't take advantage of that. Don't make that personal. But you greet one another and you touch, you even kiss, but you do that in holy ways. Translated today, because we don't live in a culture that kisses. I was in Russia and before the fall of the Soviet Union, and I met a man there, and he was so excited to see an American. He grabbed me and he kissed me on this cheek and kissed me on the other cheek. And I haven't even given you my name yet. You're not on my Christmas card list. But that's the way they greeted there. And we're not typically that way. I mean, we do have some people that can do that, and I think do that with holy kisses. But I will translate that for you. I think for us today, greet one another with holy hugs. We're more prone to hug than we are to kiss people that we don't know well or that aren't immediate family. And sometimes even immediate family. We're huggers more than we are kissers. Just make sure the hugs are holy. Make sure that they're there because you're trying to impart to that person some of your heart, and that it's not a hormonal thing. I'm being very serious about that. And some people aren't huggers. We got people, I'm hoping this doesn't offend anybody here, but we got members of our congregation, and one of the guys said to me one day, there are a few of us here from Indiana. He said, we don't hug. So we've tried to break them of that, by an intervention, get a big group hug all around them, just surround, but it hasn't worked. They just kind of stiffen up. No, go ahead and get finished. Okay, now return to normal. So we have people like that. Why the stern warning? Here's what Jesus said. It said, the leprosy left him, there's that word immediately, and he was cleansed. And then he sternly warned him. And the warning then is given in verse 44, explain, see that you say nothing to anyone. Why do you think Jesus told him that? See that you say nothing to anyone. I mean, that's not hey, I'd like to suggest, let me ask a favor. That's a command. Why? Why the stern warning? Thoughts? Verse 45, because when he disobeys this, what happens? Verse 45, to such an extent, Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city. If he goes and tells people about this, then Jesus now has to fight the notoriety of just being a miracle worker. And it detracts from the ministry that he wants to offer. Now, I want to be fair to somebody here. I know Jesus sternly warned him not to tell anybody. Do you think Jesus really expected that nobody would ever know he was healed of leprosy? No. I mean, how do you hide that? How do you hide that? Look, here's a guy, he's got nubs, has no nose, has no ears. And now you see him walking down the street, and he's got full fingers, and his nose is back and his ears are there. And you ask him, hey, what happened to you? What? And what's he going to say? What? Didn't you have leprosy? I can't say. I'm not allowed to talk about it. I mean, you can't hide that. There's a man that was born blind, and Jesus heals him. And he says to him, don't tell anybody. Do not tell anybody. It's in Matthew chapter 9. Tell no one. How can you hide the fact that you were blind and now you see? Curtis Pope, one time in chapel at Florida College, talked about that scene, and he said, imagine that guy. He's just left Jesus. He's seeing everything, but he's got to hide it. Can you imagine you've not seen all your life and now you're seeing everything, but you've got to act like you don't? And he's walking down the street and he steps aside, excuse me, and somebody goes, what? Did you just see me? I don't know. I can't say. So it's not a matter of you can't say anything to anybody, but it's let it get out naturally. Probably at first a few people are going to know, and that might be day 2 or day 3 of Jesus' teaching. But if he jumps up and runs around town saying, give me a hug, look, I'm cured, then Jesus' ministry has to focus on the part that he doesn't want to focus on. He doesn't want it to be that. But there is another thought. Other thoughts on that as to why the stern warning? What invariably happened when Jesus performed a miracle? Who also came to the front? The Pharisees, the detractors, the enemies. They came. You can't do that. Did I hear you say you did that, not God? Did you do that on the Sabbath? Was that a Sabbath miracle? So he doesn't need the detractors to come out yet. This is early in the ministry. And he wants to avoid that kind of notoriety. I hate to rush through these, but we're getting close. Why the command then to go to the priest? He says, say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them. I gave you a little clue there in the reading. Why go to the priest? Huh? It's the law. Jesus is showing here in my lifetime. Now, he's going to give some messages like he does in Matthew chapter 5. You heard it was said, but I say. He's going to say there's more to following God than what the law said. But he is clearly showing, I'm not antagonistic to what the law says. If the law says do that, you go do that. You dot the I's and cross the T's. I'm not telling you, hey, forget about the priest. They have nothing to do with this. I did this. I'm the Son of God. You listen to me. Go on your way. He wants them to continue following the law of Moses because it's still in force. It is the law. But he also gives a second thing. It's very subtle there, but it's in the text. Why does he want him to go to the priests? As a testimony to them. Because what's he going to say when he goes to the priest? He's not going to say, I just woke up this morning and this is all gone. I mean, typically, going to the priest involved, I think I'm doing better. And then they had to go back again and again, and they had to get verification. It was over a long period of time. Their Medicare system required that. You know, it wasn't a one-time thing. But here, this guy's going to go, and he's perfectly clean. In one shot, he's there. And I'm sure the priests are going to go, what in the world? And he's going to go, it's that guy, Jesus. So hopefully the priests are going to say, maybe we need to find out more about him. We have not seen this kind of miracle happen before. And only the priest can clear him of his uncleanness. Offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded. Requires a priest. That's what the law said. All right, next question. What do you see generally as the purpose of miracles? Take this miracle. Take this one. What do you see? What do you conclude about the real purpose of miracles? And I think I've got this right. Yeah. Let me suggest a couple of things to you to move things along. Is the purpose of miracles to make life better for people? I'm seeing a couple of people shaking their heads no. I think you're correct. I want you to just think about this. And I know he's moved with compassion. And I'm not saying he didn't have compassion for every person in the world. But if the purpose of miracles was to demonstrate his compassion, wouldn't it have made sense for Jesus to say in one moment, all lepers worldwide are healed? Is there one of us that thinks that's too big a task for Jesus to do? No. And we looked yesterday, he fed 5,000 people who were just hungry for a meal of the day. But there are other people who are hungry every day and they don't have food. Could Jesus not have said, there'll be no more hunger, and there wouldn't have been? Couldn't he have done that? Yeah. I can read this. I can read this. I can read this.
You lose the nexus.
I can't read. Let me finish one more. I can't read this. I can't read that. Okay, now, John.
If you just made a blanket miracle and suddenly everyone was cured or they were fed,
Yeah.
you'd lose the connection between the power that Jesus had through God.
Good. Yeah, we would lose the connection between what's really important about Jesus. And it's not just he can make my life better here. It's not just he's a powerful man and he has compassion. It is also, and so what are you going to do with your life to the man who can make you whole? And much more important than curing of leprosy is the curing of sin. But we can get sidetracked. We can get sidetracked with the things in our lives, the things that really aren't absolutely critical. And if Jesus' desire was to make life better for people, why aren't we continuing to see those miracles in the world today? Why aren't there people who can cure that today? So I'm saying by that, I think that's not the answer. I don't think that's the answer. How about rewarding those who trusted in him? He did that with this guy. You know, I am willing. If you're willing, you can make me clean. I am willing. And there are cases where Jesus will cite their faith. Your faith has made you whole. But is that what miracles are about? No, because there are some people that see miracles that didn't even know who Jesus was. The man that was healed by the pool at Siloam. And Jesus said, do you know who did this? You know who the Son of Man is? The Son of Man did this. And he goes, I don't even know who the Son of Man is. I mean, he isn't aware in that case. So I don't think that's it. I don't think that's the answer that we're looking for. Sometimes they didn't even know who he was. What about to prove he was the Son of God? Well, I mean, there's an element of that, certainly, so that to prove he was the Son of God, so they would listen to what he had to say. In Matthew chapter 11, verses 2 through 6, it says, now when John, while imprisoned, heard of the works of Christ, he sent word by his disciples. He said, are you the expected one, or shall we look for someone else? And Jesus answered and said, go and report to John what you hear and see. Now listen to the question. Are you the one? And Jesus says, the blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, the poor have the gospel preached to them. Are you the one? Well, of course I am. Have you not listened to my teachings? I'm saying things that are brilliant, things that nobody's ever said before. Of course I'm the one. Have you not seen the purity in my life and that I've reacted to everything in the proper way? Those aren't the answers he gives. Go tell John what? Miracles are happening. But miracles of a specific kind. They're miracles of benevolence, which reflect the heart of God. They're not miracles to do bad things to people. I'll show you I'm the Son of God. I'm going to lift the temple up off the ground 3 feet and put it back down in place, and there won't even be a crack in the walls. He doesn't do that. They're benevolent miracles because God himself is benevolent. All right? So, last thought. What do you think God wants for us today? And I'm going to just go quickly through it. You think he wants pain-free life for us? No. I'm just telling you, no. I don't think that's what God wants. And I know the health and wealth theology people are saying that, but that's not what God wants for us. Here's a leper who's cured, but there are other lepers who aren't. They don't receive the benefits of Jesus' power. It's not a matter of a pain-free life. In fact, I said this to you yesterday, but I want to say it again. I want to make sure you understand. It is not a lack of pain, troubles, and trials that identify us as Christians. It is how we react to the pain, challenges, and trials. It's how we react to them. We are showing we're different, not because of what we got, that's Satan's skin for skin, but that when those things happen to us, we don't react the way the world does. So you've got this statement, and I'm done. I really am done with this. You've got this statement that is, I lost my thought. Hang on. When the saints die, we do not grieve as others who have no hope. It doesn't mean we don't grieve, but it means we don't grieve like the world grieves. It's different. It's okay to grieve. The tears are okay. But we don't do that like the world does, because we have a sense of hope. So is it that God wants us to be a proof that he blesses his own children, that we get things nobody else gets? Oh, there is a sense in which that's true, but many of those are spiritual and the world doesn't see it. To prove his power over disease, I'm not sure that's it. I think it's this. He wants to use illness and disease to his glory. And that can be expanded to the other challenges that we've talked about. I think he wants to show my people have found a way to react to those things different than the world does. And it benefits us. And it shows us we're different. Join me in a final prayer. Lord, please take what we've learned here today and what we have shared here today, and let us use that to your glory, to your honor. You are God, and we fall on our knees and beseech you. You are willing. We believe you're willing, and we know you're able. Help us to deal with the infirmities and challenges and difficulties of our life in such a way that the world sees our light and glorifies you, our Father in heaven. Hear us in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thanks for being here. Yep. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to talk about the resurrection appearances. I don't want you to fill out any of that today. Don't fill out any of it unless you just want to test yourself and see if you can remember them. But tomorrow we're going to go through that. We'll go through it tomorrow. So, yeah. Okay. Otherwise, they'll be here tomorrow if you want to just pick them up then. Either way, thank you. We'll stand adjourned.